Hello and welcome to another Insider Focus, and today we're talking all things West Ham United. Declan Rice, James Ward-Prowse and perhaps a surprise midfielder target all coming up in the video. We're going to tell you the latest on what we think West Ham are going to do in the summer transfer window. Before we do that though, please make sure you like and subscribe. It's really great to have all the support that we get from you guys, and it really helps us out as well. So make sure you do that before we start, and we'll move on with West Ham's transfer window that is coming up this summer. Of course, there's going to be a huge window for West Ham. It looks like Declan Rice is leaving the club, and I'll touch more on that in detail shortly. However, the club are going to have to strengthen in a number of areas. Yep, they're in a European final, which is fantastic for the Hammers fans. But in the Premier League this year, they have certainly stuttered. Perhaps that's because of the amount of games they played last year, or perhaps it's because they are playing on Thursdays and as they were last year. Also, it's a lot of energy in the legs of the players, but it's certainly be a disappointment, and we know the club will strengthen certainly in the midfield area, and that's really where we're going to hone our focus, apart from looking at perhaps one striker target in the coming weeks. Of course, let's talk about Declan Rice. Let's start there, shall we? Declan Rice is poised to leave West Ham in a deal worth around £100 million. Arsenal have been pushing for Declan Rice and really believe they can land him, and will put the first official offer in the coming days, so keep an eye out for that. We expect the first offer to go in around £85 million. Arsenal will try and lowball, as most clubs do, and then try and work out a deal. West Ham obviously will want that £100 million. They've said he's not leaving for anything less, and they'll have to hold firm on that if they want to keep hold of him. But of course, Arsenal will be in. Chelsea have obviously monitored the situation, but as far as we know right now, Arsenal are the favourites for his signature. Bayern Munich have had a look at Declan Rice too. But we understand staying in England, and specifically staying in London, is key for the West Ham captain, who has had an absolutely fantastic season once again. The player of the year at the club once again. And of course, he is on his way to big things. Potential future England captain, and Mikel Arteta really wants him in the Gunners squad next season. Let's move on to some potential targets, shall we? Now, James Ward-Prowse has been muted for a move to West Ham for a while, and there is some truth in that. West Ham do have an interest in James Ward-Prowse, along with, of course, a number of clubs in the Premier League. The Southampton captain is heading to the Championship with his side, who don't have a release clause in his deal for relegation, so can get a maximum profit for him. You're expecting around a £45 million deal for James Ward-Prowse, even though they are in the Championship. He's contracted until 2026, so there's no major leg room for clubs to come in, wiggle room I should say, for clubs to come in and get a cheaper deal on that front. And Southampton are in a strong position. They will need to fund a summer window to help them bounce straight back up into the Premier Division, and the free kick master of James Ward-Prowse will leave Southampton in the summer. I think that's no doubt about that. Multiple clubs are looking at his signature, and West Ham are in a strong position to do that. An area of the pitch, that midfield area we've spoken about, they are looking to strengthen, probably with multiple signings in this window. We expect two at least coming in there, and we'll talk about another two shortly. But James Ward-Prowse is a target. He scored 8 goals this season. Obviously, you've seen the free kicks. He's alongside Bex now as one of the best free kick takers ever in the Premier League. He's got 4 assists for Southampton this year, in the Premier League, in 37 appearances. Very rarely misses a game, never really gets injured. Will be a top signing for someone. He's capped 11 times by his country. Like I said, West Ham in a strong position to potentially get a deal done here. Still very early to say where James Ward-Prowse will definitely end up. The bidding war will begin in a couple of weeks. Clubs will really put their hand in the next couple of weeks, so keep an eye out for that. But James Ward-Prowse to West Ham is a real possibility in the summer transfer window. Of course, the possibility of losing Declan Rice means there's the possibility of having to replace him with another kind of anchor in that midfield. Perhaps Rice has shown a bit more going forward, especially that solo run you've seen in Europe as well. But one man who certainly is available for transfer in the summer and fits the target, and we think has been looked at by West Ham for a potential deal, is Kalvin Phillips at Manchester City. Contracted till 2028 on a really long deal there, but it just hasn't worked out for him, has it? 10 games in the Premier League, struggled with injuries, signing from Leeds for £50 million. Now, just not worked out, but worth a move. If he can stay fit, he's still going to be the player that guaranteed a move for £50 million. It showed the promise that got him the move to the treble chasers in the first place. And the fact that he's English is key. You're going to see a theme here, because a number of clubs in the Premier League this season will focus on English talent simply because of the quota for Europe. West Ham will know what's happening next year, of course, after the final of the Europa Conference League, but that is a key element of that. Having homegrown status players, you need to have a certain number is important. West Ham are about to lose a key one of those in Declan Rice, and look out for Jared Bowen in the window as well. We're expecting some eyes who are looking at him to perhaps come in and have a nipple and see if they can get him to move from West Ham United as well. And Kalvin Phillips, again, being English, being capped by his country on a number of occasions, showing the promise that he did, and the talent, the athleticism and ability that he has had in the past will be something that will attract suitors. You don't get a move to Manchester City for £50 million if you are a bad player. He's just not had a good season at all. The injuries could worry West Ham. They do need someone who's as consistent and fit. They're losing Declan Rice, and if he goes, and someone who plays every week and is super consistent, and that is very, very difficult to replace. Ward-Prowse offers that perhaps in a more attacking sense, and West Ham will look for someone to maybe come in and anchor that midfield area and help them strengthen in that position. There is a major race developing for Harvey Barnes as well. The Leicester man has been looked at by West Ham, he's been looked at by Newcastle, he's been looked at by a number of clubs. Leicester will find out their fate come at the end of the weekend, when they will find out what division they are playing in. A straight shoot-off between them, Leeds and Everton, to survive relegation. It's not looking too healthy for Leicester, but miracles do happen. They're the club that did it before, right? So why couldn't they do it again? And should Leicester survive, well, perhaps the sale could still happen, but it makes it a bit more difficult for clubs, because he's contracted till 2025, and he's an England international. Yet one cap for his country, but it still makes him an England international, and that can be used in the old negotiations as well. He's got a lot of people looking at him, Harvey Barnes, and he would again suit West Ham's mould, who want to strengthen in that area of the park. They do have a number of players there, but do they have key men that can come in consistently? Yep, they've got Bowen in there, but maybe they want one more, and we think Harvey Barnes has been watched. Well, we know Harvey Barnes has been watched by West Ham and has a potential to move as well. You're looking at another £40 million deal for a player like Harvey Barnes, but worth it. West Ham will have money to spend, remember, because they are about to sell, potentially, I have to keep saying potentially, although it feels like it's more and more likely, Declan Rice for around the £100 million mark, and we would expect that to be reinvested into the squad. Could you bring in a Harvey Barnes? Could you bring in a Ward-Prowse for under £100 million? Yes, you could. That's certainly doable. Of course, what would Kalvin Phillips be? Likely a loan, potentially. So there's three that you could potentially get in for under £100 million as well. Harvey Barnes, again, like I said, major race on from, and we do consider West Ham United to be in that race. A bit of surprise midfielder target here for West Ham United. There is currently the position of Scott McTominay to talk about. McTominay is someone that David Moyes certainly likes. There's talk about David Moyes' future at West Ham. We can do something on that a little bit later on, perhaps. But for now, the position of the club is that he will be manager at the end of the season. We should wait and see what happens in the coming weeks. But Scott McTominay is admired by Moyes, a player he really likes, and a player that he believes he could get the best out of. Contracted with Man United to 2025 with that 1 year option on that deal. So let's say 2026. Manchester United in a strong position here in terms of negotiations. However, they are keen to maybe offload McTominay as they look to bring a few more options in. We do expect United to add to that midfield area along with a striker as well, and a number 10 and potential other positions too. Depending on United's takeover circumstances as well, that won't affect their window. They will have a big one. And West Ham are an option for Scott McTominay should the opportunity appear for him to leave. Is a loan an option? Not to a Premier League rival, we do not think at this time. We think if Manchester United are to let Scott McTominay go next season, it will be on a permanent deal for a decent fee as well to help them recoup, play in amongst FFP, and then also fund other things moving forward. McTominay, one that is definitely on the verge of an exit of Manchester United, not quite leaving yet, but on a verge of an exit of Manchester United. Struggle with an injury at the moment, and then obviously has been in and out of the team, but he's still played 22 times for his club this season, and has certainly probably shown his best for his country with Scotland and internationals, and perhaps that's the side that people are still looking at and seeing what Scott McTominay could be in a side where he's playing consistently and is the main man. Let's talk about the striker position. This is an area of the park that West Ham have struggled this season. Mikel Antonio, we expect to leave the club in the summer. He's got multiple offers, and we do know that he's been looked at by fellow Premier League clubs and some clubs in Europe too. So you could see Antonio leave West Ham in the summer, with that becoming more and more likely now. Danny Ings has kind of failed to hit the ground running at West Ham, struggled with injuries. 2 Premier League goals this season is not the return they probably were expecting from the Englishman when he signed. Scamacca's come in and is an incredibly talented young player, but again has also struggled. Only his first season in England, but there is prying eyes in Italy at Scamacca. There is prying eyes around Europe who maybe think that they could convince him to leave the London Stadium after just 1 year. And there's been a lot of talk of one person, which I think I want to clear up in today's video, and that is Callum Wilson at West Ham. A lot of talk that Callum Wilson at Newcastle, I should say, and a lot of talk that he could be at West Ham. Callum Wilson, let's get this right. His contract is set to expire in 2024. However, Newcastle are now moving that with a 2-year extension to 2026. He's about to become one of the highest earners at Newcastle United. He is extremely highly valued at Newcastle United, and they have no plans to sell or to sign another striker in this window, if not necessary, unless the absolute perfect opportunity arises. It's not a key position for them. They have Alexander Isak, who's come in and has been absolutely sensational, and Callum Wilson's got 18 Premier League goals this season, which is no mean feat in 30 appearances. A very, very good return that has helped propel his side into the Champions League next season, well ahead of schedule. So talk of West Ham making a move for Callum Wilson this summer, I'm afraid, is a bit off the mark, because Wilson himself is extending his deal by 2 more years. Newcastle are happy to have him there, and it would take quite a big fee to move him, especially with them moving into Europe next season. Wilson helped them get to the Champions League, and he absolutely will want a bite of the European cherry too. There's many more things to talk about at West Ham. We could do a whole video on the manager situation, our understanding of West Ham's noises out of West Ham have been consistently David Moyes is staying. Even when the sack race was happening and everyone was getting sacked left, right and centre, and Moyes' position came up, as I reported consistently, David Moyes was never considered for the sack at West Ham throughout this season. They considered that they were going to be safe, and certainly what he's achieved in Europe now maybe shows that they were perhaps correct in doing that. Next season's a new thing, and if he wins a European Cup, does that give him an opportunity to step back with a European trophy in his cabinet? We think David Moyes would want to go again. Our understanding is he loves it there and he's planning for it next season. So we'll wait and see on that front. But West Ham United up for a big summer. There could be a huge transfer, a huge loss in Declan Rice, and that means that they will have money to spend for what they will hope will be a much, much better season in the Premier League next year. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheerio.